Welcome everyone to another edition of Salty and Bitter. But this time, maybe it's not so much me. Maybe it's someone else. But anyway, so before we start this video, let me say that there's something that kind of bugs me when people use absolutes for like certain stuff. When it's like, hey, who asked for this? Like, no one asked for this. I don't know. There's something about that statement that bugs me because really, if one person said, I asked for this, it pokes a hole in your entire thing. Like, you have to be damn certain that you are going to say it. But I don't think there's anyone who plays Wotv, past, present, or future, and you're lying if you say otherwise, who wouldn't say that the gacha pool just sucks. Who asked for the gacha pool to be this bad? Literally no one. So let's break this down into three parts, really. Limited, semi-limited, and permanent units, because those are important to talk about. And I can't think of any better place to start than with permanent units. You know, JP originally had quite a bit of permanent units. I mean, it's still a collaboration with those, semi-limited or limited units, depending on the event. And you look at year one, and there was quite a few UR characters that came to the game. Quite a few. But over the years, it has dwindled. Painfully, though. I mean, it's great to have things like Another Story, but let's face it, the permanent unit pool has been greatly absolutely getting just crap. You look at this year, since the 4th anniversary, we are about halfway through the year, and we've seen Helena, Old, and June as our only 3 permanent units to the pool. And correct me if I'm wrong, at least from a JP player side, but I do believe we are at, 8 units from the previous year for the permanent addition to the pool in URs, and yes, I am counting these because these are the ones getting added to the pool. But you look at like how big the first year was and how much smaller all of the previous years are getting. And I do feel like it's about time that, or at least the first thing, we completely sunset the idea of first year units in the pool and possibly even second year permanent units. They're not something that people want to get anymore. It's not like, with these games, there's always a certain level of manufactured discontent. In other words, a term meaning basically that stuff is in the game to make you feel bad, to make you want to spend more to fix the problem. That's a very common Wotv thing, to sell a problem, or to create a problem and sell a solution. We've seen it all the time with status effects or new characters that are too strong that you need to get other characters to beat. It's kind of natural for a game like this because you need to have a content and you do need to have some kind of power creep or progression to actually motivate people to go and want to get new stuff. That doesn't really bother me so much. But the general pool of Wotv, we haven't gotten a rate increase ever, despite the fact of the number of units that are in there, despite the fact that 120s and 140s came out, and that we need more copies of units. Wotv has actually just never done anything for the players after that, despite these things being out for a while. So that's really, really bad. But, I mean, if you're not going to give a rate increase, because at this point, it doesn't seem like they want to, then sunset some of these units. For the love of God, put them in a metal shop where people can earn them and the shards, because new players will do that to get the trust mastery, and maybe even use the characters. Maybe some old players can finally just do some stuff with older characters that they want, since there's, some of us just have a shitload of medals lying around that we don't want to use for anything. I mean, you kind of screwed the soul star system. Might as well put another bullet in it and make these year 1 units not worth the points. I mean, people have too many of them anyway. The permanent unit pool is pathetic. Moving on. Next up is semi-limited. And to be fair, I'm kind of generally okay with semi-limited being semi-limited. it's kind of nice to have stuff that comes back on occasion. Problem being that some of this stuff with semi-limited really doesn't come back as often as it should. I mean, maybe there's the idea that they just don't want to put, recycle the banners that often. But this whole idea of making things special gets more absurd as you go up in the category here. Semi-limited units, like, why, for the ever-loving God, has Velis, Astrius, and all of Another Story 1 characters, and most of the seasonal characters at this point, not just cycled into the main pool. Like, I don't even think they need to be retired, but if you were to retire year 1 and put all the seasonal stuff in, it would probably make up for it and keep it roughly about the same, if that's their general goal, because we're not getting seasonals anymore, at least not that many. They've said Valentine's Day is done. I won't be surprised if Halloween, Christmas, and so on are next to follow. But, you look like JP as a player right now, if you were really interested in it, you just can't get the product. And yeah, bringing it back for a week will induce FOMO, but given how limited resources are, people aren't going to do it anyway. So why not just put them in at this point? There's no reason not to. Do both of Another Stories. I think you should only have like a year and a half time, like semi-limited. There's no reason for most of these characters to be semi-limited. There's no rights, there's no legal mumbo jumbo that's stopping people from just being in the pool, so do it. I mean, it just sucks. I think that semi-limited is useful for introducing powerful, new, interesting characters from neat events that people still generally like Another Story. But I think over the long term, it becomes almost ridiculous that, like, Astrius and Velis and all of those, you just can't do anything about them until they finally re-release the fucking banners. And they never will, because Another Story 1, 2, and 3 are all separate. And they can't rerun this because apparently it messes up a schedule that has mostly nothing. So, semi-limited is also a bloody mess in terms of perception from me. So let's move on and talk about the last one, which is, of course, limited, which to me is one of the biggest advertising points to your friends to say, nah, you probably shouldn't play this game. Which is just the general, you look at legal rights for stuff that Square Enix doesn't own. Like, for instance, the Persona collaborate. I can understand why that is difficult to, navigate and get ready and everything like that. I don't think that's generally a problem for that stuff being limited. It is what it is. And it's not worth getting angry about. It just is what it is. The thing that doesn't make any sense at this point in time is old Final Fantasy collaborations being completely and totally out. It might be just a game size related thing, to which that's maybe something that we can talk about in general in a different video, but boy oh boy, would I love to see, like, especially year 1 collaborations just be permanently in the game to some extent. And here's the thing, there's this wonderful thing that Princess Connect does, and yeah, I'm bringing up Princess Connect because it actually is a good game. Princess Connect does this thing where you can access a lot of old story events, stuff that they have complete control over legally. But it doesn't download until you actually do it. So every day, if you want to go into it, you have to download the megabytes to play it and use it, kind of thing. Wotv could easily adopt that for tons of stuff, because you know what, even from a nostalgia perspective, which is what this fucking game is sold on to a lot of fucking people, it would be kind of good if you could just replay certain events, get equipment and all of that. There's probably some example of it in the game that already exists somewhere. Oh yeah, of course, it fucking exists right here. Seriously, collaborations especially Final Fantasy collaborations, should not be removed from the pool, period. They should not be outside of it, or at the least, it should be in something called a collaboration pool, where you have a pool of Wotv characters and you have a pool of collaboration characters. Because this whole, like, mixing them in for a certain amount of time, it's not good for the game. It just isn't. Because most of the time, hey, I like Final Fantasy IX. I would like the phone game that's different from Final Fantasy IX where I can do the Final Fantasy IX characters. What do we have? Well, there's Ever Crisis out there, Dissidia Opera Omnia shut down, a bunch of other games shut down. What other games are there? There's FFBE, which does this, made by Gumi. And then there's Wotv. Does Wotv do it? It kind of looks nice quality. Doesn't do it. It did become a bit of a ring, didn't it? I have to say that it's just so effing disappointing of how poorly this thing is run. For the thing that was described a long time ago as the new flagship game with tons of quality, there doesn't seem to be much quality or thought put into it anymore. A huge renovation of the Gacha pool would go a long way to making this game more palatable, more advertisable, and just generally more player friendly. Because at this point, what do you really have to lose? I mean, it's not like you're putting a, like, some people might say they're probably going to put a smaller price tag on it, right? Well, they're kind of doing that already. They're already taking certain characters and saying, yeah, a new 100 cost super powerful unit is worth this. There's a fucking price tag on these units, and it's way less than pitying them. Doesn't that show you that their valuation of their gacha just isn't that good anymore? That they just can't do it? Whatever. I spoke my piece. I'm sure I missed some things because there's a lot to talk about that's frustrating. But the permanent pool needs to get axed down. The semi-limited should not be semi-limited. 99% of, well, at least let's say 70%, anything that's older than a year and a half should be in the permanent pool. And last but not least, like this, when it comes to actual limited stuff like Final Fantasy, like Advent Children, they really, really, really should just make it so that after amount of time, when they're Final Fantasy characters, they should be available at all times in a Final Fantasy game and their events, that people can play through them. Because otherwise, what's the point of this? And don't say a PvP simulator. No one say it. Anyway, thanks so much for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And see you later.